Jake stormed into the house, his face as dark as an approaching storm. He summoned Bedouin to the hall, sprawling on the couch. "Jake, you called," she said cheerfully. "Do you know about the disappearance of the girl I left in my room?" His voice was venomous. "Why would you ask me that?" His glare was piercing. "Answer me. You pretend not to see what goes on, but you see everything." "What insolence, Jake. Do I look like one of your little girls?" Jake scoffed. "If I find out you're involved, you'll lose your job." Bedouin chuckled. "Lose my job? Ha! Did you ever meet me before I came here? If you must know, I am a retired police nurse. I have a pension, a good fat one at that. I have my own house. I'm here because your father asked me to be. Jake, go to the mountains, exhale, and get rid of the poison in your brain. Then sit your butt down and earn a living. One day your father won't be here to replenish your bank account." Jake fumed. "You're insulting me. And you're not worth a response." She bustled away, smiling at having spoken her mind. As Bedouin retreated to her room, she felt both satisfaction and worry. Jake was spiraling, and though her words might have pricked his pride, she feared they wouldn't penetrate the toxic bubble he lived in. She wondered how long McRichards could keep ignoring the brewing storm. "They're all blind," she muttered under her breath. "Or maybe they've chosen blindness over the truth." 2 months after Mabel was hospitalized, she still remained in a coma. Her case was still in the hands of the police. Apparently, no one had been arrested yet, although there were possible clues where to begin their investigations. Sam had revealed to the police the altercation in his restaurant, and he believed strongly Jake and his gang may have a hand in his niece's condition. In the following weeks, Ro, Soa, and Timo were picked up one after the other for interrogation. Ro was the only one who was hesitant in divulging information, so they watched him closely. Sam was frankly surprised that the police had not called in Jake to question him. He spoke to Sergeant Adika about his suspicions. He was assured of a prompt investigation. Jake worried greatly about her. He regretted what he himself described in the quiet of his thoughts as a lunatic behavior. Why would he ever think of indulging in such a heinous act? Notwithstanding, he was mildly relieved, for as long as she was in a coma, his secret was safe, so he kept tabs on her. A friend in the hospital gave him reports on Mabel's progress. Having told him she was his cousin, the man often wondered why he had never come by to visit her, even though the hospital was not far from his house. Mabel was in the able hands of Dr. Couture, the handsome young doctor who had just completed his horsemanship and was working in his uncle's private hospital. One afternoon, Karen and Sam had a call from the doctor. That was an odd time to call them, considering they had gone to visit her in the morning. They braced themselves for what they feared might be more bad news. As they sat down, the doctor sensed the dread of the unknown in Karen. It was evident in her expression as they greeted him. He acknowledged their greeting with a nod. "I have some upsetting news," he said, glancing at them with concern. "We found Mabel with child." "What?" they both exclaimed loudly. "She's about 2 months along." "What a misfortune. She was defiled. Those bastards." Sam could not contain his anger. "Those bastards are responsible for this. I will not spare them. I will deal with them ruthlessly." Karen was shedding uncontrollable tears. Dr. Couture felt very uncomfortable. He got up from behind his desk to comfort her. Eventually, they all managed to regain their composure enough to ask what the options were. Dr. Couture was careful in his response. "The pregnancy could be terminated safely, but it's a choice you'll have to consider yourselves." They exchanged a long, pained look. Karen, still tearful, whispered, "We can't think straight now. Please, give us some time." Dr. Couture nodded, understanding the gravity of the decision ahead. Meanwhile, in a smoky room across town, Jake, Ro, and Soa were lazing around, drinking and joking around. Jake leaned back, laughing and swapping crude stories about their encounters with women, oblivious of the events that would unfold in the days ahead. Their dark humor was, however, interrupted when Timo entered. They all hailed the prodigal son, but he brought with him unexpected news. The younger of the Zanu girls who was abducted had been found to be pregnant. Their drug-sodden eyes cleared instantly. Jake, his brows puckered, deeply expressed shock at the news. He had never spoken about his encounter with Mabel to any of his friends. And Ro had also pretended he never saw the girl in Jake's room. "Oh, did you come into this room and saw the girl here? Did you touch her?" Jake's tone was no longer playful. Rao stammered, avoiding his gaze. Jake's restraint snapped. In an explosion of rage, he struck Ro, and the two men clashed in a brutal fight until Timo and Sawa broke them apart. They all left the house, each harboring bitter secrets of their days together, their escapades, and with extreme anger and regret about the turn of events. And now Jake, unsure of what lay ahead and the realization that they could no longer evade the consequences of their actions, ran to his father. "Dad, I have a confession to make." His father chuckled. "You've gotten more girls pregnant, huh? We went to perform the naming ceremony for your beautiful baby girl. She's Jemima McRichards. How many more naming ceremonies do we have ahead of us?" "Dad," Jake said, his voice trembling, "I abducted the Zanu girl." McRichards froze, his stare sharp and foreboding. "And you defiled her?" "No, Dad, I wouldn't. She's a minor," Jake stammered, his voice breaking. McRichards' fury erupted as he slapped Jake hard across the face. Jake fell to his knees, pleading for mercy. "I can't help you this time," McRichards said, his voice heavy with heartbreak. "For too long, I've enabled your foolishness, hoping you'd change. This is a felony. Go to the station and turn yourself in. I'll call Sergeant Adika. If you're not in custody within 2 hours, I'll ensure you are." "Please, Dad," Jake begged. "Let me stay here just for a while." "Get out," McRichards bellowed, grabbing a club. Jake left the farmhouse, not altogether humbly, but with screeching tires on the gravel. McRichards called Jimmo. "Jimmo." "Yes, boss." "What have I done wrong?" "Nothing, boss." "I don't have a good family, Jimmo. I don't have a good brother. I don't have a good son. My wife left these shores to babysit our grandchildren. She shuttles between the UK and Holland. She thinks because I am old, I do not feel the cold at night. Jimmo, why should I be telling you these things? Of course, you do not have answers to my woes. Good night, Jimmo." "Good night, sir." The detective investigating Mabel's case approached Jake's security guard, but the man offered little. Meanwhile, Bedua removed incriminating items from Jake's room, shocked by what she found. She reflected on McRichards' failure to discipline his son, wondering if it was neglect or resignation. Timo, haunted by regret, sought out Ro after days of silence. He made his way to Ro's rented apartment. Finding the door unlocked, he entered to discover Ro lying motionless on the floor, blood dripping from his mouth. In horror, he looked quickly around for any foul play and found a note on the bedside table. As he read the words scrawled on the paper, his heart pounded with fear, knowing that this tragedy was only the beginning of a reckoning some of them could no longer escape. He pocketed the suicide note before calling for help. Neighbors came running, but Ro was long dead. In his farmhouse, McRichards received a call. One of his trucks had been impounded, narcotics hidden in sacks of dung. He chuckled bitterly. Who would dare use my trucks again? Knowing interference would expose him, he called Jeremy. Why did you use my truck again? McRichards demanded. I didn't, Jeremy snapped. One of my boys must have acted without me. He cut the call abruptly, his arrogance palpable. Jeremy, now deeply involved with a drug lord, believed himself untouchable. A week later, under a drizzling midnight sky, Jeremy learned his ally had fled the country, leaving him vulnerable. Laughing wildly, he packed his bags, singing John Denver's "Leaving on a Jet Plane" as he prepared to escape by boat. Summoning his staff, he handed out fat checks and warned them not to associate his name with future deals. "Win some, lose some," he quipped, heading for the docks. As Jeremy approached the boat, the night erupted with flashing lights and gunshots. A police task force surrounded him, cutting off any escape.
"Sir, drop your weapon, put your hands on your head, and get down on the ground."
Calmly raising his hands, Jeremy surrendered, requesting his lawyer. Meanwhile, Jake, hiding on the property, froze as the sound of shouting officers and approaching gunfire filled the air. Panic seized him, and he bolted into the woods alongside the armed workers, his heart pounding. Unarmed and desperate, he stumbled through the trees, the chaos closing in. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the night. A bullet tore through his chest. Jake collapsed, gasping for breath, as the others disappeared into the shadows, leaving him behind. The police came upon Jake, drenched in blood. He was transported to the hospital in a very unstable condition. His father and Jimmo rushed to his bedside. When Jake regained consciousness, he tearfully begged his father for forgiveness before succumbing to his injuries. McRichards folded his son into his arms and wept bitterly over him. He should have sent him to his mother, but he wanted him here with him. He was his joy. His two daughters had often spoken about the way their father pampered him. To him, he had done no wrong. He loved his son to a fault. The hospital staff looked on until his racking sobs subsided. On the drive back home from the morgue, McRichards confided in Jimmo of his plans to bury Jake and then join his wife in the UK. He entrusted Jimmo with the responsibility of overseeing the farm, expressing gratitude for Jimmo's loyalty. He spoke as if he had had this moment planned all along. Man could indeed have a premonition of the end of a situation as it unfolded. McRichards had always feared the end would be disastrous for his brother and son. This was no prophecy to him, it was reality. A philosopher once stated, "He who sought evil would find evil." This indeed was a guiding lesson of nature. At the hospital, Mabel's life hung by a thread. Dr. Couture had no time to rest as the tension reached its peak. The doctors worked around the clock to keep Mabel stable as the baby was being delivered by cesarean section. When the news broke that they had lost Mabel, Karen's grief spilled into uncontrollable despair, and she began to scream, overwhelmed by the death of her parents and then her beloved sister, all in 3 years. She ran down the corridor, ignoring Sam's pleas to keep her calm. She seized a scalpel from a passing nurse and threatened to end her own life. Everyone got alarmed. Her uncle went down on his knees, pleading with her not to add to his sorrow too. His calm voice, urging her to think of her sister's baby, eventually broke through the haze of sorrow. She suddenly flopped on the ground, helpless. As the months flew by, Karen found solace with her newborn niece named Mabel. She got her a live-in nanny, Ma Mary. When alone with her niece, Karen would look at the sleeping child with a smile, determined to raise her with love, despite the tragic circumstances of her conception. One evening, Karen dressed for a dinner date. Ma Mary wished her a pleasant night. Karen hurried away when the doorbell rang. Smiling sweetly at each other, Dr. Couture led her hand in hand to his car, embracing a new beginning.